Hola clase, hoy vamos a aprender cómo conjugar algunos verbos irregulares en el tiempo presente. Hi guys, today we are going to learn how to conjugate a few different irregular verbs in the present tense. There are 3 verbs that we are going to go over. 2 of them you have already seen this year. There is a worksheet that corresponds with this video, and it is 4 pages long. Please make sure that you are filling in the notes as we go along in the video. If you guys need to pause the video at any time or rewind, feel free to do so. So first we're going to start off with our verb hacer. Hacer is an irregular verb. You guys have seen it multiple times this year. The first time you saw it was the beginning of the school year. So think, have I seen hacer? Where do I know this verb from? If you said talking about the weather, then you are correct. So you guys learned this verb earlier in the year when we talked about different ways to describe the weather. So one was hace calor, saying it is hot. Hace frío, it is cold. Hace viento, it is windy. And hace sol, it is sunny. So again, hacer should look familiar to you as you saw it in the weather section, as well as in chapter 3b, you learned yo hago, which means I do or I make, and tú haces, which means you do or you make. So now let's go ahead and look at our verb hacer in depth. So, as I told you, hacer means to do or to make. So this verb has 2 different meanings, to do or to make. It is a very common verb in Spanish. Therefore, you guys need to memorize not only the translations, but the conjugations as well. So this is an irregular verb, and the reason why we call them a go verb. So why do I call it a go verb? Well, that reason is because in the yo form, we add the letter G. So you guys can see in the yo form, we add the letter G. Therefore, our ending is go because our yo form ends in an O. So these are called go verbs. It is irregular because we are adding in that letter to the conjugation. Okay? So again, it is an irregular verb due to the G being added. All of the rest of our conjugations, however, are going to follow our normal conjugation pattern, where we take off our last 2 letters known as our ending. So we are going to take off that ER and then add the appropriate ending to the end. So looking at our to form, you guys can see it is tú haces. El, ella, usted form is hace. Nosotros is hacemos. Vosotros hacéis. And ellos, ellas, ustedes hacen. So again, in order to conjugate a verb, first thing we need to do is to remove our ending so that we have our stem. So we take off our ER. Now we have our stem, which is HAC. And then we are going to add the ER endings to the end. Just keep in mind, hacer is irregular, so in the yo form, it is a go verb. A lot of teachers will call this yo-go verbs because it is in the yo form. We add the G to the stem, so that is now going to end in GO. So the best way to learn this verb is to just memorize our conjugations. That is going to be the best practice for the next 2 verbs as well. So again, hacer is only irregular in the yo form. All the other conjugations follow our normal conjugation format. So let's look at 2 different examples. You guys need to copy down the example in Spanish and the English translation as well. So, our ejemplos or examples. First one, yo hago la cama cada mañana. This means I make the bed every morning. Another example is los estudiantes hacen su trabajo. The students are doing their work. So those are two examples of hacer in sentence format so that you guys can see how the verb is conjugated in the sentence. As usual, look at your subject in order to conjugate the verb. All right, our next verb. This is a verb that you guys haven't seen yet this year. So this verb is called jugar. All right, jugar is another irregular verb. So jugar means to play as in sports, okay? It is not to play as in an instrument. It is only to play talking about sports. So, jugar is an irregular verb because it is a stem changing verb, or it is a stem changer. So, what does that mean exactly? Well, it means that our stem changes. Okay, so looking at it, our normal stem is when we take off our last two letters. So when we take off that AR, we are left with J-U-G. Jug is our normal stem. This is a stem changing verb, meaning we have a change in that stem. So what is that change exactly? Well, if you look at our new stem, it is now J-U-E-G. So what is the difference between the two? You guys can see we add in the letter E. So this is a U to UE stem changing verb. So again, our normal stem is J-U-G. If it is a stem changing verb, we are going to have to adjust or change that stem. So we actually add in the letter E here, and our stem is J-U-E-G. Now remember earlier in the year, I told you guys when you are conjugating, you go step by step. So you write the stem in the first one, add your yo form ending, you finish that conjugation. Now you move on to the to form. You write your stem, add the ending, now you move on to the next one. This is why that is so important. So looking at our conjugations, you guys can see the yo, tu, él, ella, usted, and ellos, ellas, ustedes forms all get stem changes. However, your nosotros and your vosotros do not. So this is why I told you earlier in the year to do each subject by itself, not to go in and fill in all the stems and then go back and add the endings. So let's look at our conjugations. Yo, it is juego. Tú, juegas. Él, ella, usted juega. Nosotros jugamos. Vosotros jugáis. And ellos, ellas, ustedes juegan. So keep in mind, it is an irregular verb because our stem changes. Our endings are not going to change. It is an AR verb. It gets our normal AR endings. O, as, a, amos, ais, an. The only thing that is changing is the stems. All right, and keep in mind, nosotros and vosotros do not get a stem change. In Spanish too, you guys will learn a lot more stem changing verbs. Jugar is one of the most common, which is why I want you guys to see this one before you possibly move on to Spanish too. So, two examples with jugar. Yo juego deportes los lunes. I play sports on Mondays. Another example, nosotros jugamos fútbol americano. We play football. So here you guys can see jugar conjugated in the two different forms. Keep in mind, jugar is one of those verbs that you need to memorize. Okay, so look at your conjugation. You guys need to memorize that conjugation. Our last verb that we are going to get to is our verb tener. So you guys have seen this verb multiple times throughout the semester. One of the most common times we learned it is when we talked about our age. So when we learned cuántos años tienes, and we said yo tengo 14 años or yo tengo 15 años, when you learned how to talk about how old you are. So, tener is an irregular verb. Tener means to have. Again, a very common verb in Spanish. It is an irregular verb because it is a stem-changing verb and a go verb. I did tener last because I wanted you guys to see an example of just a go verb and just a stem changing verb before we get to tener, which has both items. So let's go ahead and look at our stem. So normally to get our stem, we remove our ending or the last two letters, ER, and whatever we're left over with is called our stem. So our normal stem for tener is 10. Now, tener is a stem-changing verb, meaning we are going to change that stem. So notice our new stem is tien. We add an I in there. So this verb is an E to IE verb. So again, our normal stem has just an E. Our new stem has an IE. But wait for it, not only are we stem changing, we have a go verb in there. So remember, our go verb only occurs in the yo form. Let's go ahead and look at the conjugation for this crazy irregular verb. So, yo form. This one is not going to get a stem change since it is a go verb. So we add the letter G in there. So yo tengo. Now we are going to start our stem changing. Tú tienes. Él, ella, usted tiene. No stem change for nosotros or vosotros. Tenemos and tenéis. And we will stem change again for ellos, which would be tienen. Again, this is an irregular verb. You have to memorize this chart and how the verb is conjugated. That is it for our 3 irregular verbs. Again, we have our verb hacer, to do or to make, our verb jugar, to play, as in sports, and our verb tener, which means to have. You have already seen tener and hacer throughout the semester. Jugar is a new verb for you guys. With these being irregular verbs, you must memorize our conjugations. We're going to go ahead and practice our conjugations for the rest of class.